If your players are struggling to improve, if they have stagnated and have stopped growing, in your opinion, what's the answer? Welcome, as always, to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Whelan, and that was an interesting conversation I had last week with a fellow tennis coach. There's a growing concern within the area in which I work that players are not progressing as we believe they should. And let me put into some context what level of player we're talking about. We're not talking about beginners or once a weekers. We're talking about players who are, quote unquote, already on the player pathway. Players who are playing in and around a county level at a minimum. So these players are already training between 2 and 4 hours a week within squads. They're probably also having private lessons and playing the occasional tournament as well. So all in all, they're probably playing between 4 and 7 hours of tennis a week. If the players are not progressing, what is the answer? First and foremost, we have no idea where these players are going to develop to. Player development is non-linear. Long-term player development, yes, an okay guideline. However, we have no clue whether or not the player is going to improve. So first and foremost, let's just put this into context. So these players are playing 4 or 5 hours a week. They're not getting better. And the coach was looking for answers. How can they help the players improve at a quicker rate? The answer, we're going to give them more coaching. So despite the fact they're already training between 4 to 6 hours a week with a coach within a squad environment and within a private lesson, the coach felt they're not improving. So the answer was very simple. Let's just give them more of the same. And when I asked the coach and challenged the coach, what was the rationale? Well, they wanted to get the best of the best training together so they can have more sparring. So let's get the better players within the area, bring them together once a week and get them to spar. This is despite the fact that the centre, there's a couple of centres around me that are what we call a performance centre. And that's where the best of the area are supposed to go and train and spar every week within programs, and they're called different titles. So despite that already being in place, the idea was, well, they're not improving in those programs. So what we'll do is we'll give them more coaching. And to me, it's just crazy. And when I sort of, again, challenged or asked questions, okay, well, when are these sessions going to take place? Oh, they're going to take place at weekends. Weekends when competitions happen, when these players are supposed to go off and compete. So we train Monday to Friday, we send them away at a weekend to go and compete. But now they're not going to compete at weekends, they're going to have coaching. So we're just going to put more coaching in place. And there's a couple of things that I want to discuss in today's podcast about this whole idea of more coaching is the answer. If we look at these player programs, and these kids are training 4 to 6 hours a week, they're training in group environments, in performance programs that the county or the region have set up. So they're already training with, quote unquote, the best of the best. They're already getting some sparring, which the coach said. And so they're already getting the same what they're proposing to give them more coaching. Secondly, the second question is, well, in your opinion, when you say the players aren't progressing, what is it that you're seeing? And the reply was, well, when we watch them compete against other players and other counties and other areas, they're not as good. They're not as match savvy. They're not as mentally strong, and we're losing matches. So we think that they need more training in that area. So the observation analysis, if you want to start using coaching terms, is all about, well, we're watching them play matches. They're struggling to win matches. So therefore the answer must be the coaching. We need to give them more coaching to deal with the situation. My reply was rather stark and quite simple. Maybe get them playing more matches rather than give them more structured, explicit coaching. Let them play more matches. Maybe the issue is they're doing too much coaching. They're having too much instructions and explicit learning, and they're not getting enough implicit learning and actually playing the sport they're training for. Why is the answer more coaching? The second thing I probably want to discuss is maybe the coaching itself is the issue, because if they're getting 4 to 6 hours a week, I'll probably look over quality over quantity. If they're not improving on the match court with 4 to 6 hours a week on the practice court, how can you think that the issue is they need more of that? Surely look at the coaching. If the coaching is not representative of a match court, so again, I don't know, because I don't know all the players, but if the coaching is things like basket feeding, technical work, isolated practice, cooperative hitting, half court hitting, lack of serve and return, it's probably the coaching that's the issue, not the fact they need more of it. And you don't believe the coaches are doing a good enough job. Why don't you address it with the coaches? And again, I know for the fact that the people who are looking at this decision will go to the other clubs and look at the other coaches and take part in the sessions. Address it at the source then. If you don't believe the coaching is of high enough standard, if you think the coaching is an issue, deal with it there and then. Don't take the kids away. Give them to another quote-unquote performance coach and let them try and fix the issue. Because again, if I'm that performance coach and these kids are coming to me once a week and they're not my players, I'm not going to make any radical changes to their game because they're not my players. So are you actually addressing the issue here? Is the issue that your players are literally not getting a high quality enough session? Is it the fact that if they are getting the quantity, it's not the quality, so it's low representative? Like I said before, it's isolated and it's basket feeding. Or is it the fact they're just not playing enough matches? Again, I don't know the stats and stuff. I don't know the players' details here in terms of hours played and number of matches played and stuff like that. But it just completely blows my mind how people think that more coaching is the answer. Again, I'll address the coaching bit first. More coaching. I have it all the time with my players. We need more private lessons. Again, quite recently a player said to me, we want 3 private lessons a week. I said, absolutely no chance. There's no need. It's a waste of money. You're lucky that I'm giving you 1 session a week. Even at 1 session, I'm trying my best to play like a 10-year-old, and I still can't do it. I'd rather you bring in a second player and maybe have 2 2-on-1 sessions a week, because then you can hit with the other 10-year-old and I can facilitate. Oh, no, we want 100%. Again, the mindset of coaching will fix everything. It's just nuts. It's crazy. And the whole idea of, well, if they're doing 6 hours coaching, let's do 10. Or let's do 8. Let's increase the coaching hours and see if that improves. And goes back to, I've said a few times here, it's the quality over quantity. You only have to look at this whole mindset of hours. Long-term player development. Oh, you need 8 hours a week if you're 8. Absolute rubbish. No, you don't. You don't. Some might need 8. Some might need 4. Some might need half an hour. There's no set criteria in terms of what you need to do. And we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. You can't look at the national number 1 player, see if they're doing 12 hours a week coaching, and then just think, yeah, we'll do 12 as well. They're playing 100 matches, we'll play 100 matches. You're not catering to what's in front of you. You're just trying to put in more hours and crossing your fingers and hoping that the players improve. For me, it goes back to the original issue. In your opinion, where is it the players are struggling on the match court? Well, it's probably the fact that they're not playing enough matches now. It's probably the fact that the practice court does not link in with the match court. So it might be how these practices are being developed and delivered. It's probably not the fact that they can't play tennis. And it just really blows my mind. Like, let's just give them more hours. Then I will look at it from a coaching point of view. If it is an on-court issue, I would look back at the coaches and say, like, what is it you're doing? What type of training are you doing? And I I've worked in a performance pathway for 20 years. I guarantee it's basket feeding. I guarantee it's isolated practice. I guarantee it's lots of half court up and down hitting. It's cooperation hitting. It's hitting with an idea of being consistent or hitting a rally ball. It's the opposite to how we play tennis. There's a mentality, especially with here in Great Britain or the UK, of intensity and volume, it equals performance. Not the fact that in a tennis match it's sometimes quite low intensity because you're hitting maybe one shot and the rally's over, and the fact that you're also trying to beat your opponent isn't there in training as well. And I just struggle with this whole mentality of let's play more. No, let's make our coaching better. First and foremost, let's address the coaching. And again, there's such a scared fear of addressing coaches and saying, is that truly the most efficient and effective way to coach? Or is it survivorship bias or confirmation bias of, well, that's how the UK number one's training, so we're just going to copy that, despite the fact that it might not actually be the training that's making the player better. But where's the challenge of coaches and people saying to coaches, is that the most efficient, effective way? What's your methodology? Again, any coach watching this video now or listen to me on Spotify, what is your methodology? What do you base your coaching on? Is it, and it will be based on some type of science, whether it be cognitive information processing, which is the traditional way, whether it be ecological dynamics or ecological psychology, constraint-led approach. But what is your methodology? As a coach, do you have a methodology? And as a coach, when you go on the practice court, what is it you're practicing? Me, when I step on the practice court, I'm not saying that I'm the greatest coach in the world and, oh my God, look at me. But when I train my players, my sole intention of training my players is to get them better on the match court. I do not want technically good-looking players. I want skillful problem solvers, decision makers, adaptable players. So my sessions are chaotic, they're messy. Sometimes it looks like it's just a nightmare for players because there's so much chaos going on. But I'm developing a wide range of skills because I've only got a short amount of time. And if tennis coaches are still teaching grips and shapes and follow-throughs and tip stance within your lesson, that's the issue. The issue is not the quantity of hours, it's the quality of the coaching. And I keep banging on about this, and I get people get quite annoyed by it. However, we have to assess the cognitive information processing way of learning. We have to open our eyes and look at alternative ecological views. We understand that the body is not a computer. Sorry, it's not an AI model. The brain is not a computer. It's a living, complex organism. Yet we train it in a very computerized way. I'll just tell you information. You process it and you just come up with the commands. And we know through psychology that's not how the human body thinks and reacts. So it's really, really important that we have that in our mindset. So what is the answer? And I think it's relatively simple. Just play more tennis. And I say this a lot, again, I'm sorry for repeating myself, but just play more tennis. If you feel that your players are not improving on the match court, get them playing more matches. And you can put on match plays, festivals, box leagues, competition, friendly matches, whatever you want to do, team matches, whatever you want to do, get them playing more tennis. We need to move away from this mindset of, if players aren't improving, we'll just throw more coaching at them. And if they're already doing 4 to 8 hours coaching a week, it's probably the coaching that's the issue, like we've discussed earlier in this podcast. Anyway, that's my rant for today. As always, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave any questions or comments down below, and until next week, I'll speak to you soon.